Hey folks, this is Alex with Chicago Detours. Hope everybody can hear me as I talk into my phone out here right now. Just like Amanda did the other day, we're going to start doing these sort of neighborhood walk-around sessions where we'll do what we haven't been able to do all that much, try to get out of our own homes a little bit, explore the areas that are right around us. And in this case, I am going to be sort of recreating one of my earliest virtual tours. Way back in March, when we first switched from walking to virtual events, I put together a presentation where I looked at a couple of historic blocks right here in my own neighborhood of Lincoln Park. So I figured for a quick walkabout, we'll do this for about 20 minutes here, recreating that with my phone and my own sort of quick jaunt around the neighborhood would be a fun way to do that. I've got my mask off right now because I'm kind of sitting off on my own, not near anybody else, but I will probably put that on as I walk past people. So if that muffles anybody's presentation or anything like that, then just let me know in the chat or something like that. All right, just making sure that I am seeing everything clearly here. This is my first time doing a Facebook Live event like this in a long time, so hopefully it'll be some fun. All right, so just to give you some sense of where we are and what I'm talking about, I'm going to reverse my camera here to show you one of the most magnificent buildings in the neighborhood. I'm at the corner of Wrightwood and Hampton Court. What you're looking at is the Dews Mansion. This is constructed in the 1890s by an immigrant from Germany. I'll cross the street here to take a closer look at it. This is built by an immigrant from Germany who made an absolute fortune off of brewing back in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s here in Chicago. He and his brother lived right next to each other here at the corner of Wrightwood and Hampton Court and built themselves some truly incredible mansions, as you can see. This one is done in a French Baroque style, and it has these beautiful statues right above the entranceway here. This type of statue is called a caryatid. This is something that was done by the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, where they would make a statue into the column holding up what's it called? Holding up the porch up above it. That's what we see right here. Statues are kind of decayed. Surprised me a little bit because the rest of the mansion is in really terrific shape. The owners of it, I'll kind of walk over here to show you this. The owners of it have this wonderful side garden. The smaller mansion is actually rentals, which is crazy to me that you could rent in a historic building like this. And these are both city landmarks. But you've got this beautiful landscaped garden over here. That second floor window is stained glass, and it's absolutely remarkable. Obviously, I'm not the owner. I'm not walking inside there right now to take a look at it with you. But yeah, I've always been a little confused why the statues are kind of degraded here. It actually makes it kind of lovely. If you ask me, it almost makes it feel more like something you would find in European ruins, the fact that they're a little bit degraded, but it's something that is certainly iconic in this neighborhood. And like I said, this is built by German brewer back in the 1890s, inspired by the World's Fair of 1893. It's an absolutely massive mansion, as you can see as I'm walking down the side of the street here. 3 floors tall. They would hold big balls and soirees, and really terrific ornamentation on it as well. I'll kind of finish up over here looking up at it. Iconic part of the neighborhood. Somebody commented romantic. Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. And I never really see all that much activity around it. I think the people who live here are happy to spend their time inside their mansion rather than popping in and out. There's also this mysterious little door. I think this must have been used for delivering coal or something like that. It's down here on the sidewalk level. It's fascinating. I've never seen it open. I'm guessing it doesn't really open at all any longer. So what I'm going to do now is walk over here. I did want to point out, actually, really quickly, let me turn around the camera again here. If you look off in that direction, you see that high-rise that's a block away? If I'd been standing here in the 1890s, you would have seen the original Ferris wheel at that location. The original 1893 World's Fair Ferris wheel was taken apart by a guy named Charles Yerkes and reconstructed in Ferris Wheel Park, an amusement park that's where the McDonald's is located at that location right now. You can find videos of that on YouTube. I'll see if I can find one, put it in the comments later on today or something like that. But yeah, that was an amusement park built in a neighborhood that was already becoming like German millionaires row at that time. The neighbors were not too happy about it. And the mansion that we saw, that's really one of the few examples of the 1890s that's still left in this neighborhood. But we'll see, this neighborhood has a whole bunch of different decades that have been built up over the years. The name, by the way, was Francis J. Dews. And let me show you his house one more time. That's the Dews house that we were seeing the outside of. I saw somebody was asking the name of the brewer, Francis J. Dews. So right across the street from the Dews house is another incredible building. I'm lucky to live in this neighborhood because there's some really great architecture in the span of just a couple of blocks. And let me show you this apartment building from the 1920s that's right across the street, right across Hampton Court from the Dews mansion. This is the Park Royal Apartments, I believe they're called, constructed in the 1920s in this absolutely incredible Moorish revival style that you see right here. Look at all this beautiful terracotta decoration, the serrated tooth arch, and then if you look up, the beautiful work goes up and up and up until you get to the battlements on the top of that building. It's one of the most incredible structures in the neighborhood, if you ask me. And I don't think you can clearly see the interior there, the lobby. But if you could look up photos of the lobby online, this and the neighbor are just incredible buildings. Those are constructed in the 1920s when this area is pretty popular with gangsters. There's a lot of jazz clubs. We're not far from the site of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, for that matter. And supposedly every apartment building from that decade has some sort of association with Capone or with some other gangsters. We'll see one building in a couple of minutes here that definitely was associated with Capone back at that time. But these were glamorous apartment buildings for a glamorous age. And there's something that always catch my eye. The neighboring building, there's twin buildings here, has this wonderful medallion that gets repeated in a whole bunch of its decoration. You can see it reflected in the window right here. I always love how that looks against with the reflection in the sky. These are, like I said, 1920s apartment buildings built in that glamorous sort of, this isn't Art Deco, this architecture, but it's sort of heading in that direction, looking up at it here. And it's definitely built in boom years, I think it's fair to say, and quite obviously at that. Now, right across the street from that is another piece of neighborhood history. This is the Second Church of Christ Scientist, constructed by the architect Solon Beeman for the Christian Scientist congregation right around the turn of the 20th century. I believe this is completed 1901. And it is just a perfect piece of classical architecture and an immaculate recreation of the Greco-Roman style. This is actually a duplicate of a building that had been constructed for the 1893 World's Fair. If you look up the Merchants Tailors building at the Columbian Exposition, that's built by the same architect, Solon Beeman. It's smaller, but it's basically an exact duplicate of this structure. And the Christian Scientists have been meeting in this building for over a century now, but they probably, actually, this just got confirmed, no longer probably will not be meeting there in their original structure for much longer. The congregation has gotten really small. There it is over my shoulder. I'm trying to work out the camera. There it is. The congregation in there has gotten really small over the decades, and they have been looking for a way to redevelop this building. So they have worked with a developer and with an architect and just got approval from City Council to gut this building. They are going to completely gut it. Only the outside walls will be remaining, and it's going to be replaced with a new condominium building rising, I think, about 10 floors or something like that. So it'll be much higher, and I'm tilting my camera correctly here. But that means the original church space is going to be lost, and obviously I can't run in there and show you that right now, but the second floor is where they have the worship space. Dates back, like I said, turn of the 20th century. Beautiful work by Salon Beeman, and it's going to get lost. All of the interior spaces are going to be destroyed, so they can build parking spots and new condominiums. And that's something that, as a neighbor, I was part of the Zoom call and was not super thrilled about it, but I could not stand in the way of development there. Nobody could once they decided to sell. And this was the site of a preservation battle for the past couple of years. Preservation Chicago listed this as one of the most endangered buildings in the city a couple of years back, but that preservation battle is at least partially lost. The exterior is going to remain, but the beautiful interior of that building is gone. All right, so what I'll do now, I'm going to head up Pine Grove, which is the street right over here, just for reference's sake. You can see over into Lincoln Park right there. You can just make out there's a gold statue over there. That's a statue of Alexander Hamilton that has been in that spot for decades and decades. So it went through a restoration a couple of years. And the monument itself used to be much bigger and more elaborate. You can find images of it online. But yeah, we got shiny gold boy Alexander Hamilton over there staring at the colossal, weird sculpture of Goethe that's over there at the that intersection of Diversey and Lincoln Park, which actually used to be the northern terminal of Lakeshore Drive, for reference's sake. I wanted to show you the other side of the Christian Scientist Church. I love this inscription: "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." That'll be saved, but the inside is going to be torn out, going to be replaced by condominiums, which, I'm happy that at least some of it is getting saved, but it will be a bit of a loss, I think it's fair to say. Now, walking up Pine Grove here, we're going to see several different types of residential architecture all crammed together in one little block. That's actually one of the things that I find really cool about this neighborhood, is that you can find so many different examples of how people have lived in Chicago over the decades. If I turn my camera around, I can show you an example of a fancy old townhome. This one has actually been renovated quite a bit in the past couple of years, but those sort of rough-hewn stones on the outside, that's a nice example of Richardsonian Romanesque architecture, something that's quite common in Chicago back in the 1880s, 1890s, and we'll see some more really lovely examples of that in just a moment here. There's a couple of townhomes like that on the block right here, but there's also a couple of other alternate examples of residential architecture right here on the 2700 block of Pine Grove. If I look across the street, you'll see an example of a 4+1. This is actually a controversial type of apartment building. These were really common in the 1950s, 1960s, but they were heavily opposed by a group called the Old Town Triangle Association, who thought that building style like this was aesthetically unpleasing, basically thought they were ugly, which, all right, but also thought that they attracted the wrong type of person. These attracted young people who were moving into the city and looking for a cheap place to live that was relatively close to downtown Chicago. And that was not the kind of people that the Old Town Triangle Association wanted living in Lincoln Park. They were really the first wave of gentrifiers, and you can learn more about this in a book called The Battle of Lincoln Park. So they actually succeeded in, getting 4+1s banned by city council. You can find a lot of these in Lincoln Park and Lakeview, built in a building boom in the 1950s and 60s, but they haven't been built since then. They're very functional. Maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing, but they're functional. Earlier type of apartment building is right behind. This is a courtyard building, probably constructed, based on the architecture style here, I'd guess this is constructed in the 1910s, maybe the 1920s, but I'm guessing the 10s. Courtyard buildings like this replaced older types of apartment buildings, tenements, because it allowed every apartment to have a window facing in multiple directions. It allowed for multiple points of entry and exit while still being very efficient, packing a lot of people into a relatively dense piece of property. So you can kind of see a contrast in about 50 years. This type of apartment building, a 4+1, a courtyard, is really popular in the 1910s, 1920s, and then right across the street, the 4+1 is popular in the 1950s, 1960s, And then rising up above them, high-rises, of course, become popular in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So there's all these different examples of housing in this couple of blocks here. And that's true all across the city, of course. But this being my couple of blocks, I've gotten to know these examples quite well. And you can see lots of other oddities. This is actually one of the weirder oddities in the neighborhood. This building right here is a private men's club. I think it's called the Lakeview Men's Club or something like that. I've never exactly known what goes on there. I have a long-standing suspicion it's just a place where people have affairs, but I could be wrong. And across the street, you've got this row of incredible townhomes. These date back to the 1890s, all in that Richardsonian Romanesque style that we had seen with the other townhome a couple of minutes ago, that rough-hewn stone and the look of sort of a medieval castle almost to them. These are, the bay windows. They're just absolutely beautiful. And I've always loved, too, all of them have a sort of distinctive personality. Even though they're all clearly constructed together, are part of the same development, each of them has their own sort of shape, especially up along their roof line. All of them have a different pinnacle, and it makes them all look terribly lovely. Right across the street from them is another 1920s apartment building. This is the entrance to 2738 Pine Grove. You can see it rising above us here. Beautiful work in stone on some of these. I wanted to highlight that a little bit for you here. I've stared at those many times on dog walks. That building actually is a fascinating one. Just for a little anecdote connected to it, that's where Stephen Colbert lived when he was a resident of Chicago, when he performed at the Second City back in the 1990s. He lived in an apartment upstairs, and supposedly would have people like Steve Carell and Amy Sedaris stop by for dinner parties, which is absolutely unbelievable if you ask me. All right, I'm just finding my path across the street here. We're getting towards the end of our time together. Whoop. I'll be walking off in about 3 minutes, but wanted to show you a couple of other cool things before I do that. All right, if we look down the alleyway here, you'll see a Roman dome. That's the Elks Memorial. The Elks built this back in the 1920s when a lot of development was going on in this neighborhood. It's got this incredible dome, coffered ceiling, beautiful decorations. It's open to the public very frequently, though I don't think it's been open since the pandemic began. You can see it down the alleyway there. One of those iconic sites along the lakefront, and one that I have visited many times, and which my kids greatly enjoy screaming and hearing the echoes inside of when they can. All right, turning around back here to go over to the intersection of Diversey and Pine Grove here. There's a couple of historic buildings and a couple of historic anecdotes that I think are worth sharing really quickly. So I'll start with the one that's most visible. I'm approaching it right now. This is the Brewster apartment building. This is constructed in the 1890s, just like the Dews Mansion, but this is an enormous building for that time period. It's actually got some of the same engineering and aesthetic features that get associated with the Chicago School of Architecture, the downtown skyscrapers that are first being created back in the 1890s. This building has had some crazy history associated with it. The developer of it fell down the interior space. There's an interior balcony and staircase with a beautiful wrought iron elevator, but the developer fell down that atrium and died during construction. Supposedly Charlie Chaplin lived in the penthouse apartment here back in the 1910s. Governor John Peter Altgeld lived in this building at one point as well. If you've ever seen Child's Play, this is the building that Chucky, the murderous evil doll, first lived in when he haunted, well, not just Chicago, but haunted children, I guess. Right across the street from it is another 1920s apartment building. This one also has a little bit of a bloody history. Today there's just a 7-Eleven, and I think it's a retirement home for the most part. But inside this building is where an attack happened. There was a guy, a singer, who worked for one of Al Capone's bars, who lived inside this building right here. He decided that he was going to cut and run, would no longer perform at the Green Mill, but at a different bar, the one located where Stan's Donuts is, at Diversey and Clark Street. That did not make Capone's enforcer, Machine Gun Jack McGurn, very happy. So McGurn shows up at, I think his name is Joe E. Brown's apartment over there behind the street from me. Joe E. Brown answers the door, and Machine Gun Jack McGurn cuts his throat and his tongue. And incredibly, Joe E. Brown survived. He went on to have a long career in Vegas, and he was there was a movie made about this called The Joker is Wild, starring Frank Sinatra back in the 1950s. But that's a tangible piece of Capone and gangster era history here in Chicago. And then I wanted to end with this shot right here. This is one of those telltale signs of this neighborhood. You've got that grand Brewster apartment building from the 1890s, a brand new condo building completed just last year, and then this old 3-story gray stone squeezed in between them, still hanging on, still bars and residences inside here. But I always love that visual contrast. I think it tells you everything about this neighborhood. So that's been my quick walk around a couple of historic blocks here in the northern reaches of Lincoln Park. Hope everybody enjoyed tuning in, and I hope you have had the chance to join us on one of our virtual Holiday Stories happy hours. If not, you can still book that. We're running that through the holiday season here. You'll see me on Zoom if that's the case. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good one.